I think that reality exists where your awareness is. If your attention or your awareness is on pain or on suffering, then that of course becomes your reality. What is so amazing about lucid dreaming is that you have these different types of states. You have normal wakefulness, you have sleep, which is mostly restorative, you have dreaming, and then you have this last state that is really considered a transcendental state, where your body's asleep, but your mind is very lucid and awake. It turns out that we know how to actually induce that state in the work that we do. When you wake up in the morning and your eye begins to perceive light from the sun, visible light, the band of visible light spectrum sends a signal to the optic nerve. The optic nerve sends a signal to what's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which sends a signal to the sympathetic chain, which activates the pineal gland, and the pineal gland begins to make a chemical called serotonin. The serotonin is the daytime neurotransmitter. It gets us up and going. And our brain waves, typically when serotonin is circulating through the brain, are what's called beta brainwave patterns. When there's an inhibition of light and it starts to get dark, the lack of light all of a sudden sends the same signal through the same pathway, but now the pineal gland gets busy taking serotonin and turning it into the nighttime neurotransmitter called melatonin. Now melatonin, the nighttime transmitter, makes our brain a little bit more groggy, and of course our brainwaves start changing from beta to alpha, and in certain people into theta. So serotonin is the up neurotransmitter and melatonin is the relaxing neurotransmitter. So melatonin has been known in scientific circles to have a lot of health benefits, antioxidants, and of course it's the chemical that helps us to dream and to sleep. And of course as cortisol levels go up or stress hormones go up, melatonin levels go down because the survival gene is signaled, and it's not a time to sleep if there's a predator outside the cave. So some people get switched on with their stress hormones, and that's why they can't sleep. Also, when the cortisol levels are activated, the inhibition of melatonin begins to cause the body to take carbohydrates and store it as fat, because that mechanism allows us to have a reserve of energy, and it's a primitive signal as well. Well, there are certain moments and certain times, certain windows during sleep, primarily between 1 in the morning and 4 in the morning, when melatonin levels are at their height. Now, when the pineal gland is active and it's beginning to produce more activity in that specific gland, melatonin can turn into some very profound metabolites, sister molecules to melatonin, but think about it like an upgrade. So when the pineal gland becomes activated, it acts as pretty much a transducer, a neuroendocrine transducer, which means transducers are like television antennas. We pick up frequencies and all of a sudden it turns into imagery. And the imagery that's created when the pineal gland is picking up information beyond light, a higher spectrum, all of a sudden that frequency begins to produce an alteration in chemistry. First chemical is a very, very powerful antioxidant. One of the most powerful antioxidants known to man. Anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. You take that molecule, you tweak it again, the sister molecule of melatonin is the same chemical found in hibernating animals. Now why is that relevant? Because in hibernation there's no sex drive, there's no appetite, there's no interest in the external environment, the body moves into stasis. So now as melatonin gets an upgrade, you produce a more powerful antioxidant, you produce a chemical that causes the body to move into the present moment. You take that molecule, you tweak it again, and you have a benzodiazepine, which is Valium. Now while it fits in the same receptor sites as serotonin and melatonin, but it carries a different message. So when you see benzodiazepines starting to be active in the brain, it shuts off the survival centers, pretty much anesthetizes the analytical mind. So now you're not fearful, you're not angry, you're not aggressive, you're not sad. For the most part, the survival center shut down, and the body can relax into the present moment. A good place to be if you want to create something. If you take that molecule and you tweak it again, you have the same chemical found in electric eels, a biophospholuminescent chemical. And that is the chemical that begins to produce higher amplitudes of energy in the brain. The brain is now processing higher frequencies, and the brain is becoming illuminated, just like an electric eel. You take that molecule, you tweak it again, and you have the most powerful hallucinogenic known to man. And it's the combination of those chemicals that fit into the same receptor sites that causes the brain to go into a lucid and altered state.
Wow.
And certain people just have naturally higher levels of those chemicals because they tend to be less stressed, they tend to be more of a type B person, they tend to be more relaxed in the present moment, they're not as vigilant, they're not always trying to figure things out or think too much or analyze. They tend to be a person that's more paying attention. They're just more in touch with their feelings, really. And so when you get the full package of those chemicals, of course the person, all of their awareness is right on what's going on between their ears. In other words, they're having a full-on sensory experience without their senses, and it seems like they're there. What makes this so profound is that when a person is having an inner event and they have a greater level of awareness because their senses are heightened, they seem like they're there. They forget about their body, they forget about the external environment, and they forget about linear time. They're so caught up in the present moment that it begins to literally reshape their brain. Their experience of that world begins to change their structure neurologically and begins to produce a different emotional signature to the body. And all of a sudden now the brain and body are getting reprogrammed. So, as you know, the ultimate state then is to become so conscious that you can direct outcomes when you're there. Now, when you're beginning to direct outcomes, you're now going to have to step into the world of physics and outside the world of biology, because when you're in that realm, you literally are experiencing dimensions. You're literally experiencing other worlds. And there are infinite frequencies that the brain can transduce into imagery, depending on the person's consciousness, the person's level of awareness, their emotional states, and the ability to be able to direct those transcendental experiences begins for us to become more preoccupied with that journey into the dream time, into the dream world. And that's when we come back to this world, and when we have enough of those experiences, the brain only perceives equal to how it's wired. You all of a sudden starting to perceive more of reality that's always existed, but you didn't have the surface to perceive it. Einstein said the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. He didn't say the particle controls the particle, he says the field. So when you're truly in that realm, in the realm of the quantum, you're not in the realm of the material, the particle, you're in the realm of possibility. If we're deep enough into that realm, we can begin to instruct or command matter as the result of our conscious intention. So in other words, if you're having a full-on sensory experience and it seems so real to you that you're literally switching on or switching off the light, and all of your attention is there, and you're doing it from the field, theoretically, you should be able to produce more measurable effects on the nature of reality, on the material world. And now we're getting into the mystical. We're getting into the realm of the masters that really were able to begin to influence outcomes in a very short amount of time. It's nothing scary or nothing that goes into the model of possession or anything like that. It's just a skill. And I think that the more you practice it, the greater effects you produce. The biggest lie that we live by and we've been conditioned into believing is that we're linear beings living a linear life. I think we are dimensional beings living a dimensional life. And that they're in the quantum, in the realm where there's an infinite amount of time, the eternal present moment. There are infinite dimensions and spaces that are all rolled up in the present moment. So as we begin to experience greater and greater aspects of the mystery of the self, and you begin to realize there is no past life or there is no future life, they're actually stacked on top of each other. Simultaneous. So then the soul is the thread that connects us to all of those different lives, all of those different possibilities. So when people start to have relevant experiences equal to the challenges or the places they are in their evolution in this lifetime, and the soul begins to reveal other aspects of the self, the mystery of the self then begins to become more broadened, and you understand on an implicit level or a deeper level what choice you need to make for your own evolution. And gosh darn it, you only need a few of those, just a few profoundly mystical experiences that are happening in the present moment right now, where you can never return back to business as usual. So then the side effect of that is that you're less seduced by things that create separation or preoccupy us, whether it's competition or success or money or fame or beauty or whatever it is that people get caught up with. All of that, the dross begins to fall away, and because you're less seduced by it, you start to see the hidden meaning behind all things. Now when the mystery of the self begins to reveal itself, that experience that you have will cause you to dream even greater. You can't dream the next dream until you have that experience, because you're journeying back to source and you're beginning to discover more of what's unknown. So then the experience then enriches the circuits in your brain, it produces a new emotional signature in your body, and your spectrum of reality broadens, and you start seeing things that have always existed but you didn't have mind to perceive it. So the soul then reveals an aspect of ourselves. Now, would you call that a lucid dream? Well, I would call that a lucid dream in the conventional sense, but it was actually a parallel lifetime. And I was lucid.